Well, don't feel bad about that. Even the pros get their saw stuck sometimes. I'm going to show you how to avoid getting your saw stuck. First, we need to get some logs to show you how to not get stuck in. We'll drag these ones up out of here so we can see what we're doing. One of the best ways to keep from getting your saw stuck is to always be mindful of which way the log is trying to bend. Unless a log is sitting perfectly flat on the ground, gravity will always be trying to bend a log one way or another. In the case here, one end is sitting on the ground, so is the other end. The middle is suspended. Gravity's pushing down on the log. There's nothing underneath to support it. The strength of the log is what's resisting the gravitational pull. To do that, these fibers up here are pushing together while the ones down below are pulling apart. The wood on the top that's being compressed, we call that compression wood because it's being compressed. The wood on the bottom that's being pulled apart, we call that tension wood because it's under tension. It's trying to be pulled apart and it wants to go pathoing. Pathoing is a technical term. To demonstrate that, I have two pieces of wood. Mr. Obvious strikes again. If the middle is being pulled down by gravity, the bottom part is separating, whereas the top part is pushing together. Now that's what's happening inside this log. As gravity's pulling down, the log is resisting until some punk comes along with their chainsaw and starts cutting into it. And when you cut down into it enough, the log loses its strength, and that compressing wood on top pinches your chainsaw and you get stuck. You can get your saw way down close to the bottom and the compressing wood is going to follow that cut line, so you can get it stuck even way down here. If you were to start bucking this way, at some point that log is going to pinch your saw and you're going to get it stuck. Instead, we could go at it from the bottom. The problem with that is when we get up to the top, when the saw makes it up close to the top, this part's going to get really weak and it's going to break probably before we cut through, which is fine if you don't mind having tear out and cracks in your log. But if you want a clean, flush, crack-free log, that could be a problem. I'm going to clean some of this dirt off of here before I cut it because my saw is sharp and I don't want to get it dull. The way to do this to avoid cracking and tear out on this part is to cut down into that part first, down into the compression wood, but not enough to significantly weaken the log so it's going to pinch your saw. It could be a quarter to a third of the way, depending on how much weight is being put on it, how much stress is being put on the log. And when I'm cutting down into here, I'm paying attention to any kind of resistance that would indicate that it's starting to pinch. If it starts to pinch, get it out of there. Then come up from the bottom, cut that tension wood. Since it's trying to separate down here, it's not going to pinch your saw. As you cut up here, the log starts to weaken, but it's okay because you're in the tension wood where it's pulling apart instead of pinching together like up here. So you want to finish and make the wood weak down here in the non-pinch zone. Now I did it kind of a fancy way. I came down like this, then came around like this. That's just me being fancy. The idea is to cut all the way around and let it break in the middle. It's less likely to tear out if it breaks in the middle. Also, keeping the saw inside the cut makes for a more uniform cut. If I keep the saw in the cut the whole way around, I don't have to worry about matching up the two cuts because it's all one cut. It also avoids having a ledge here, but instead of trying to explain that, someday I'll try to show you. But that's more of a fancy way to do it. The more common way is just to cut in from the top and then cut in from the bottom. Well, that's how I do it when both ends are supported and the middle is suspended and it's trying to bend down this way. With the next log, I'm going to try to get it up here so it's the opposite, where it's supported in the middle but suspended on at least one end. Spoiler alert, in case you have somewhere to go and you can't stick around, you basically do the opposite. I don't think we're supposed to do that when we're making videos. We're supposed to keep you here, not give you an out so you can go away. One of these days I'll learn. So that worked out nicely. It's almost like I did this on purpose. In this case, the log is supported in the middle. This end that I'm going to cut off is suspended up in the air, although on camera it probably looks like it's sitting on the log deck, but it's not. Gravity is trying to bend this log this way, both of those ends toward the ground because the middle's supported. But now I pretty much spoiled the rest of the video because I already told you, now we just do the opposite. But I have something else to tell you too, or at least I hope I think of something to tell you. Now, since gravity is trying to bend the log this way, the compression wood's on the bottom. The bottom is going to be the pinch point. The top is the tension wood that's being pulled apart. That's the pathoing wood that wants to go pathoing. In this case, if we cut down from the top, we're not going to get pinched or get our saw stuck because the compression wood's on the bottom. If we cut this side, we're cutting into the tension wood. When we get toward the bottom, it's going to crack and tear out. We'll do the opposite. See, I'm repeating myself. I don't even know why you're still watching. We'll cut up from the bottom, a quarter to a third of the way, then finish off on top. In this case, I'm going to purposely misalign my cuts because I want to show you something. See, I told you I'd think of something to show you. This is what I wanted to show you by misaligning those cuts. Actually, before I get into what I was going to get into, this is a really good visual of compression wood and tension wood. See, I'm not just making this stuff up. I didn't plan for that really good visual to happen, it just worked out. But this cut is well below this cut, but the log can't drop now because there's a ledge right here. It's sitting on this ledge. So if you're going to misalign your cuts, try to make it so this top cut is misaligned on this side of the supported log. This is the log being supported. This is the log that needs to drop. But it can't drop with the misaligned top cut being on this side of the bottom cut, unless I was to cut all the way through, which I could do. But there could be a pinch point down here the way it is. If you're going to misalign your cuts, it's better to misalign your top cut on this side of the bottom cut. That way when it gets down here, it doesn't have a ledge and it can break away and drop. I don't know if that made sense the way I tried to explain that, but I'm going to make a cut on this side of the bottom cut to see if I can demonstrate. Okay, that didn't work the way I thought it might because we already released the tension because the top set down on these logs from our first cut, which released the tension. But this is what I mean by a ledge. That log can't fall because it's sitting on that ledge. Pretending this is still attached to this log and I didn't cut all the way through, when you cut down this side, when it breaks off, it can fall. Whereas if you cut it on this side and it breaks off, this ledge keeps it from falling. Ideally, you make both your cuts line up like this first one I cut, then you don't have to worry about any of that. I don't know if that explanation made any sense at all. I know what I'm trying to say, but after listening to myself say that, I almost have myself confused. I better cut this goofy thing off before somebody sees it and thinks I made this misaligned cut. And always make sure you throw the evidence in the bushes where nobody will find it. At least not until after you're long gone and they won't know who did it anyway. What it comes down to is just being mindful of which way the log is trying to bend. Which side is going to have the compression wood, which side is going to have the tension wood. In this case, this log is being supported on both ends. It's suspended in the middle. It's trying to bow down. The compression wood's going to be on top. The tension wood's going to be on the bottom. You start a little ways into the compression wood, then finish on the tension wood. Or if it's like this one that's being supported in the middle, it's the opposite. Gravity's trying to bend it down this way. In that case, the compression wood is on the bottom. You want to start with the compression wood from the bottom, finish on the tension wood on top. When you're finishing your cut, that's when the log starts getting really weak and it's going to start to bend. In that case, you want your saw to be in the tension wood where it's expanding, not in the compression wood where it's compressing. Had a little malfunction there. Well, this was a controlled situation where I was able to arrange the logs so it was easy to see which way gravity was trying to bend them. In the real world, it's not always going to be that easy. If we take a look at this log, it's more complicated. It's off the ground here, it's on the ground here, it's off the ground there, off the ground, on the ground, off the ground again over here. In a case like this, how do you know which way the log is trying to bend? How do you know where the tension wood, where the compression wood is? It might be different on different spots of the log. Sitting on the ground there, it's sitting on the ground here, it's suspended here, it's probably trying to bend down that way. But if you look at the butt end, sitting up in the air, pushing down on this spot, which is a fulcrum that's causing it to pull up on that side. If that's lifting up on this part that should be pushing down, with that, I'm not 100% sure that the weight of the butt end is not lifting on this enough to counteract the gravity that's pushing down on this. In a case like this where it's not real obvious where the tension is, chances are it's not going to be a lot of tension. In that case, what I would probably do is just start cutting from the top and pay attention. If it's a larger log, you could get in a ways and put some wedges in to keep it from closing up. That's a good technique. I rarely do that. I rarely use wedges when I'm bucking. Nothing wrong with it, and it's a great technique. I just pay attention to what the log's doing as I'm cutting. If I'm cutting in and I see it starting to pinch a little bit, or I can feel it starting to pinch, pull the saw out, go in from below. Instead of just standing here flapping my jaw about this thing, let's try it. Let's cut into this log of questionable bending stress direction and see what happens. Did you see that? It was starting to expand here. Now I know the tension wood is on top, the compression wood's on the bottom. So I'm fine just to keep going the way it is. Because it's not a log with a lot of tension, not a lot of weight on it, I'm not worried about it splitting out on the bottom or tearing out. This is how it's going to be a lot of the time. If a log's not under a lot of stress, it's okay just to make one cut all the way through. When you want to make the two cuts is when there's a lot of weight trying to bend a log really hard. If I noticed this cut was starting to close instead of opening up the way it is here, I would quickly pull out and go in another way. Okay, some of you, get your minds out of the gutter. I know you're thinking it, knock it off. What I've also been noticing lately is my saw is starting to cut a little crooked. The way it's been acting, I can tell it's likely because this old bar that has a lot of hours on it is finally wearing out. I've been waiting a long time for this bar to finally wear out so I can show you how to fix that. It's easy to do. It restores it back to cutting straight. Video coming up soon. Before we go, there's one more thing over here I want to show you real quick. This was the tree I was originally going to use for this video. This one is quite a piece of work. It's being bent in all kinds of directions, jammed between trees. Hard to know which way it's being bent because it has one force going one way, one bending it another way. Some really dangerous situations here, not just this tree itself when it falls down or springs loose, but other trees it's pushing against that have tension in them, dead trees that might go with it when it moves. I started working on this video up here, cutting into the top. Then I decided this is the wrong tree for this video today. This is a better tree to do a video about how to cut up a dangerous tree situation without dying. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut this one up on another video and make that one. Today's video was more of an intro into some of the basic ways to not get your saw stuck. This video should be more advanced. Even though it's about not dying, there should be some advanced techniques on how to not get your saw stuck, because this is more of an advanced situation here. Hopefully I can do this without dying, because then there'd be nobody to edit the video or upload the video and you wouldn't be able to see it. If you want to know more about not getting your saw stuck, keep an eye out for that video. I'm not sure when it'll be coming out. We're supposed to have more rain coming in, especially into next week, which is one of the reasons why videos have been a little bit skimpy lately.